Hi, good morning. Welcome to this month's book club meeting for Change Makers Nonprofit Book Club. Hi, Deanna. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you join me. Looks like we got somebody else coming on. Hey, Meg, thank you so much for joining us today for the Change Makers Nonprofit Book Club meeting. I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to talk about this month's selection, the Mr. Rogers effect. Oh, I've got my background on, so it always makes items look funky, but I hope you had a chance to start the book and hope you had a chance to finish it. I'll be honest, I finished it late last night. But today snuck up on me. I'm like, how did we get to 2/3 of the way through January already? But here we are. And I'm excited to talk to you about it. Hey, Meg, it's good to see you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep, can hear you perfectly.
Great, good to see you too.
Yeah, well, I'm excited. We're going to start chatting. Sometimes folks jump on when they're free, but I'm excited to talk to you both and get your insight about this book. What I really like to do is just kind of start off real casually. Actually, I'd love to hear from both of you where you're joining me from. Actually, that's always one of my favorite things to learn from people. Meg, you're not muted, so I'll let you go first.
Okay, I am about 20 minutes outside of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, great.
I am in the southwest part of Ohio. I'm in Hamilton right now. The office is in Westchester, Ohio. So not far from Cincinnati.
Great. I work with Miami University, so I'm very familiar with your area.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm in Northwest Georgia. I'm kind of right smack in between Atlanta and Chattanooga. If you're going north towards Tennessee, I'm right there in between, and perfect combination of being close to the city, but also a small town. And it's not as cold here as it has been. I'm sure you both where you are much colder than, well, I say that, but our temperatures lately have been pretty close to what you guys experience. And my family in the Northeast are kind of like, oh my gosh, can't believe we're in the teens and have talked about some single digit nights here lately, which is unheard of for us in Georgia. We're not prepared for that kind of weather. I had to rush out and buy myself an actual winter coat this year. So, but great. I would love to hear initially just what did you like about this book?
I'll be honest, I haven't gotten my hands on it, and I know it's like, well, why are you here? But I want to connect, and I am an avid reader, so I just wanted to kind of check it out, and I do want to be a part of the conversation, but it's like, how
Yeah.
can if I didn't read? So I'm sorry, I
No,
am
you
guilty of
definitely
that.
can. If
Okay.
you, I think, as I said, I finished it last night. So I'm the book club leader and picking the books and the timing and everything, and I still finished it last night. But I think we've had people do that before where they're just here, they're listening, they're contributing. Please feel free to jump in at any time. I'm excited to connect with you and to, hopefully I think if you are the slightest bit familiar with Mr. Rogers, the things we're going to talk about are going to resonate with you and you're going to be able to contribute to the conversation without having read the book. So I'm glad that you're here and hope you'll stick around. Meg, did you get a chance to read it or
I am actually, Deanna, I was so glad to hear you say that because I am in the same boat as you are. I just saw this email come through last week, and I'm just in a space where I'm really just thriving for some like-minded professional connections and wanted to just jump on. I am also an avid reader, so I look forward to listening and digging in and jumping in the content later. But by the time I saw the email to now, just didn't have time to pick it up. So Deanna, I am so glad that we're in the same boat as we're sitting here today.
well, don't worry about it all. I'm thrilled to have your insight and hopefully, it inspires you to want to read the book because I really got a lot out of it. It's not meant particularly for nonprofit executives or nonprofit staff. But I think the tenets in it are so appropriate to what we do. And I'm assuming that you both work for nonprofits.
Yes.
That the conversations that we have with the people that we serve, I think could totally benefit from the secrets that are in this book, that if you, as I said, if you watch Mr. Rogers, they're not really secrets. As an adult, you can kind of look back and see, oh yeah, I see what he did there in the conversation styles that he had with people. But I think definitely I went through and made some notes and tried to highlight where I thought this was really relevant to the nonprofit professional. So hopefully that'll be helpful for you. And I'm, as I said, thrilled to connect. I've actually had one of these, I think the last one we did, I had somebody jump on and was just there to listen, didn't put the video on or anything. And so it was just me talking at the screen. So I'm happy to have some faces. And then hopefully, as I'm an avid reader too. And you know, that being part of the book club will be a benefit to you. We can continue to grow it, and I hope you'll share it. It's on Amazon. They're still experimenting with that platform, and how to allow us as users and book club admins to promote it. It's hard because I can't communicate within Amazon with anybody that's in the club other than commenting on it. So you'd have to like go out and look for my comments. So trying to kind of blend that with our communication from Just Right Grants, and hopefully there's crossover there, that people will be able to get the updates on the books that we're reading and provide, if you've read a really great book in your nonprofit development career that you think would be helpful, that you'd like to recommend, I am always open to that. Right now, it's just me kind of looking around and seeing what's out there and thinking, oh, I'd like to read that and talk about it. So always open to your feedback and suggestions of books that we could read. But one of the things that I really liked about this book, and I think that you'll enjoy too, if you're a fan of Mr. Rogers, is the flashbacks that she doesn't call them flashbacks, but it's kind of incorporated into each one of the secrets as she references one or two of Mr. Rogers' episodes. And so it was fun for me, having grown up watching Mr. Rogers, to remember those episodes and kind of remember having watched them as a child and not really understanding the behind the scenes of how Mr. Rogers was communicating with people and how he was communicating with the audience. And to break that down in this book, I am like craving Mr. Rogers episodes. Like, having watched it last night, I'm like, I'm going to YouTube or PBS or wherever the Mr. Rogers episodes live, and I'm looking up the particular ones that she references in here, because they just kind of sparked this, you know, it just sounds cheesy, you know, my inner child, the memories of how good it felt to watch Mr. Rogers as a kid. And then I like how in each chapter she broke it down in a way that, you know, she referenced the Mr. Rogers episode or an experience in Mr. Rogers' life that impacted him to become, you know, everybody's neighbor. And then talked about how to, you know, what the definition of that was, like breaking down that particular communication style and in a psychological way, as a psychologist herself. Psychologist or psychiatrist? I think she actually counseling. So that, I'm not sure. I should know that. But in that approach, breaking it down in the educational aspect of it, and then how to practice that in real life, I thought was very helpful, how she did that in each chapter. And I really liked at the end of each chapter, I think you'll like this too, there's kind of the concepts to contemplate, and it kind of charges you with some inner action or external action of how are you going to put this into play? How are you going to recognize people that made a difference in your life, or show gratitude or show empathy? And that kind of drove my conversation in my notes about how this works, how this could work at a nonprofit level. And I like how she also references other books that complement this, a few of them by Mr. Rogers himself, and then some other ones that I think I'll be interested to read just from a personal perspective. One of the things I didn't like about the book, I like to talk about that too, be realistic. I'm not trying to sell the book, but it's just, it felt a little repetitive at times. So if you notice that, I'll be interested to see if you catch it too. I would read it and I'd think, wait, didn't she just explain that? And I'd think, am I rereading the paragraph that I read a few minutes ago? And so that, you know, that I tend to catch that. And it felt a little bit like she was filling pages to fill pages at certain parts. But in general, I really liked it. I thought it was very well written. I thought it was very easy to read as far as the concepts that she's explaining, and anybody could really grasp it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna say, stop me at any time, please.
Oh, okay. So just to clarify, you're an affiliate of Amazon?
I am an Amazon affiliate. Yep.
Okay.
So the
And
only
then,
thing that that means is, one, that I have a book club. I'm a host of the book club. And
yes,
then if you were to go out and purchase the book from the link from my book club, there's a
yes.
little incentive that comes back to me for that, for promoting the book.
Okay.
So technically, I guess I am selling the book, but
Yes.
I'm
So,
not the publisher selling the book and
yes.
making a huge
What
profit off of it.
I guess I was just trying to get to, how can we help you promote the book club? Because you're
Yeah.
saying that you're doing it all on your own and you want to bring more awareness to it. So how could we help you promote it?
Yeah, I would love if you've got that, like the email that I sent out this morning,
Yes.
if you
And
got
just
that.
blast it out?
Yep, if you could just
Okay.
blast it out and maybe even share, people. I have worked in nonprofits for a long time. That person, that people connection or that people
Yes.
referral is so huge, because we have, time drains and money drains and all those things, and everything's being pulled in 1,000 directions. So if
Yes.
obviously I want your honest opinion, but if you feel like there's value in this, I think if you share that, then your network is going to, it's going to pique their interest. I'd
Okay.
love to have, these calls just bursting with people all offering wonderful insight. As I said, love that you're here, but I think
Yes.
the more of us that can get involved in these, and that's part of my mission in doing this, is that we're so competitive at the root of nonprofits and the
Yes.
root of nonprofit fundraising. And really and truly, if I'm a homeless shelter in Cartersville, Georgia, I'm probably not competing with a food pantry outside of Cincinnati, right? So
Right.
if there's something that you're doing that has brought you success, then why shouldn't that that homeless shelter in Cartersville be able to benefit from that? Because we're all working towards the same goal. And I
Exactly.
think I think things like this, where we can come together and talk about that mutual goal, can kind of change, I hope, can change that mindset a little bit, that we're
Yeah.
not all, sharks in a pond trying to get at the same fish. We're just, we're all trying to accomplish the goal of making the world a better place, as cheesy as that sounds, but it's true. And if we can benefit from each other, so just send in that link. We share everything on social media as well, but that email went out this morning has got the link to the Amazon book club, so they can see what books are coming up. They can sign up through there. All of the links to purchase those books are in there too, so it's super easy. And then I also try to work ahead, so you can see, okay, this is next month's book. And then I'm
Mhm.
going to try to build it out even further than that a little bit, so that you can plan ahead and maybe think, well, I
Yes.
can't make February's, but I can make March's. So I'll start reading March's book now. So you're not like me and finishing it the night before the meeting.
Yeah.
But I would be so grateful for that, because I know
Okay.
that, your recommendation it far exceed just me, a total stranger saying, hey, join this book club.
Yes. And I also wanted to contribute, I saw a documentary a while back about Mr. Rogers and how he was a big game changer in the sense of, he brought a diverse group of people on to his platform at a time when maybe it wasn't popular to bring on, different types of people from different backgrounds.
Mhm.
So I'll put that up there. And then I recently was on an allyship training, and it was all about, you know, coming together and, um, maybe connecting on, I guess she framed it in the sense of, yes, it was about race, but how can we check our own selves first, to try to create allyship with one another? And because we all have some privilege somewhere.
Mhm.
So connecting with those with disabilities or those in the LGBTQ community or those of a different race from us, So I
Yeah.
think about that and how that can help, and she used I may not be saying it right, but please forgive me. The tide raises all boats.
Mhm.
So in that vein of empathy and gratitude and connection, maybe we can touch on those things that we can connect on and not so much the other stuff. So
I think you'll see all of that in this book. Um, there's so much of that that is referenced in this. And as she breaks it down, empathy is a big one that the whole chapter is devoted to. Self-awareness is one of the secrets, and that you can't truly love someone else in the truest and authentic definition of the word love when you don't know who you yourself are. Is that the right verb to use? When you don't know who you are, you can't accept someone else for exactly who they are, because you're still, you might end up in a situation where I referenced the line in here because it just kind of like hit me in my guts. Let me see if I can find it. It's a little bit ahead. Let's see. Practicing acceptance. Self-acceptance is the first step in truly accepting others for who they are. We have to be honest with ourselves about who we are, our strengths and weaknesses, challenges, and what we offer to the relationships in our lives. This line struck me. Without acceptance, what seems to be authentic connection may in fact be an empty, phony relationship with the mental image of who we want a person to be rather than who they truly are. And I think that really can resonate from a nonprofit staff person perspective, that we may project onto clients who we think they are based on our experience, or based on our experience with people we think look like them or talk like them or live in the same part of town as they do. And I think it's easy to fall into that when you're doing that same work over and over again. But when you are authentic and you are committed to kind of going through these steps that the book describes, you can truly see the human that's in front of you and not the statistic that's in front of you.
that's powerful.
Thank you.
That is powerful. Thank you for sharing that thought.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're both going to love this book, really, truly. I think you're going to fly through it, and I think you're going to love it. The
Sorry, I
first
missed the first part. Can you just say the name again?
of
The book.
the book, it's the Mr. Rogers Effect.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just had a quick thought too. I frequent our library. So it might sound corny, but if I print out the email, or do you have a flyer, maybe I can post up, like, when you could, at least here, when you go into our libraries, they have like a poster board or something. And like almost when you go into Panera Bread, we can post up flyers for you too and just spread the word that way.
That'd be great. Let me make a note, and I've got tons of like templates and stuff. I can put one together and I can send it
Okay.
to you as a PDF.
Okay, great.
And that's a great idea. We've got a book club. Our library is very well loved here in Cartersville, and is a huge
Definitely.
resource for the community.
Yes.
And we've got tons of nonprofits. So it's a really great idea. Thank you. I'm going to do that in
You're
our local one too.
You're welcome.
The first secret in the book is listen first. And that really resonated with me. I am a mother and an entrepreneur. And my instinct when somebody comes to me with something is to be the problem solver. And I'm also a firstborn, so I think that has something to do with it too. I am the fixer. And I have to remind myself, and sometimes I remind the people that I love, okay, if you're coming to me, my instinct is going to be to want to fix this for you. Do you want to talk, or do you want me to fix it? Like, tell me now, so I know going into the conversation. But she talks about how Mr. Rogers really listened to truly hear people and not just to respond. And so I think as a problem solver, I'm hearing people talk. And as they're talking, I'm thinking, how am I going to solve this? Before they're even finished talking, like, what's my solution for this? And I'm not the kind that is like, well, if you don't use my solution, then why are you asking me? I know there are people that are like that. I am just like, I have to, this is part of who I am. I have to offer you a remedy. And Mr. Rogers was constantly trying to reinforce that you have to be authentic in that listening. And it's a skill that you learn. We're not trained to do that, particularly in our culture. And I think for me, in those roles that I have to be I'm a small business owner. I've got to be able to respond quickly. If I'm not responding quickly, I'm wasting time, and wasting time is wasting money. And so I feel that pressure to solve it. And a few chapters later, he talks about white space and learning how to integrate that white space into your listening, and to have pregnant pauses. It said if you watched enough of Mr. Rogers, you might, as an adult, feel a little squirmy at first, because he does pause, and you want to fill that air with words and sound. And Mr. Rogers would take a step back and think about what his response was going to be, or really internalize what the person had said to him, so that he could answer them appropriately, or maybe not even answer at all, just be silent in letting them speak to him. So I thought this was appropriate for nonprofits, because this is definitely a key point in how we work with those people that we serve. And, they come to us with a problem. They're facing a life challenge in some way, shape, or form. And we, as inherently, for being in existence, we want to solve that problem for them. But I think we need to give them that dignity and that respect and that love of, like we just talked about, hearing their story, hearing what's unique about them. And then we'll be less likely to kind of push everybody into that same solution. Like, okay, well, you come to us for this. I know your problem. You're going to do this, this, and this, and then check these boxes and you'll be fine. And that may not be the best approach for everybody, but if we listen to their story, we could come up with the solution eventually that is right for what they need.
And
I've been
also,
reading a book. I just got finished with a book. It's by Michael Bungay. Stan had to look it up. Stanier, and it's called Coaching Habit: Say Less and Ask More Questions. And it's really interesting, and it's been a powerful journey for me the past year as I try to not say much of anything on calls or in meetings or what have you. And it was enlifting and empowering, because one of his key phrases throughout the book is stay lazy and stay curious. Meaning, just ask questions and allow them, meaning they're whoever you're engaging in conversation with, to turn the lights on for you. And so he gives a lot of scripts through the book, and a lot of questions, like open-ended questions to ask with what and how, through the book. And something that I've been trying to do is, like, I've written down all of those questions on Google Docs, have that document open when I'm in meetings, like on the screen, but it's easy to do in Zoom. And just really to engage that as a practice. And it's hard. It's really hard to focus on and do, but it has been very beneficial. And I've watched some of the relationships or conversations in my work be more productive, I would say. And it takes pressure off of me. I'm not just saying as much. So kind of sounds kind of similar to that practice in art.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, that goes really well. There's another chapter that, secret number, which one is it? Empathy. Now I'm not gonna be able to find it. It might be in the Pause and Think, where he talks about, or the author talks about how, Mr. Rogers was always curious. I mean, when you said that, I was like, oh, that's perfect for this book. And if you think about how Mr. Rogers, he kind of acted like a kid a lot of times, right? He'd walk into a room and be like, oh, so much to see, so much to see. And it reminded me of my boy. I've got 3 kids, 7, 5, and 2. And when they're at that stage of when they're seeing things for the very first time, and I thought Mr. Rogers did that his whole life. I mean, he lived a good, long life, and he did that. And what she talks about in the book is, and I'm sure you saw from the documentary, the Mr. Rogers we saw on television was the Mr. Rogers of real life. Like, that's how he lived his life. And that he would do that and try to inspire that sense of awe in every interaction he had, to really get to know someone, not just at face value, but what he called the inner, oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember, the inner essential, the invisible essential. What's inside of us all is what really makes us. We see each other at face value and can, and we start to make assumptions and preconceived notions. But when you ask questions like that, Meg, and you get to the root of who someone is, then that's when you can truly accept them, like you were talking about, Deanna. And that's when you can have a real, authentic relationship with them that's mutually beneficial. Meg, if you don't mind sharing the link for that in the chat, I'd love to check that out.
Yeah.
Because I talk a lot. I get the nature of my job too, but I'm trying to practice that too with my kids. Like, don't just talk at them, talk with them and help them to work through and develop a conversation style that is engaging and, basically works in all of these different components. The next secret was validate feelings. And I think, he talks about what a world we would be if we all had the emotional intelligence of Mr. Rogers, like, and how to talk about things that are painful. And Mr. Rogers was never afraid to do that. And I think that's critically important for nonprofit staff. We have to talk about things that are painful with people that come to us for help. And if we are afraid to do that, they are not going to feel comfortable with us. They are not going to feel as though that they're going to benefit from that relationship. And so I think they may not be the ones that are at that level of emotional intelligence to do that. So I think it falls on us so that we can really get to the root of what's happening and we can understand how to help them, and to build a sense of trust and respect, and stability for them, that trust and respect builds stability. And then they feel comfortable in knowing that they can work with us to seek whatever it is that they need to, improve their quality of life. And I remember watching Mr. Rogers episodes, even as a kid. I was very fortunate. I grew up in a very emotionally stable and loving home. I didn't face a lot of the challenges that some of my friends face. And so I didn't have firsthand experience with that, but I remember there being some episodes of Mr. Rogers where even as a kid, I was like, ooh, that's kind of icky. Like, why are we talking about that? And even as a kid, I guess I'd been programmed that, or just human nature, maybe, you don't want to talk about things that make you feel bad. But what Mr. Rogers said and what the author references is that anything that's mentionable is manageable. If we can talk about it, we can fix it. If we don't talk about it, then we can't. And that really struck me of one for nonprofit staff to have that kind of be your mantra. Well, you got to talk about it and figure it out. And then also as a parent, I don't want my kids to sit in a room and stew about something that we can talk about and get to the bottom of. Let's learn how to talk about these things that make us feel uncomfortable, and then maybe not carry any of that emotional baggage into adulthood and have that impact their relationships. I think you'll both be fascinated by the section that the author goes through about Mr. Rogers' interaction with Senator Pastore, I think is how you say his name. I meant to look it up on YouTube and watch it again because I was just enthralled in the book. I've never presented to a Senate committee before, but I can imagine that it's nerve-wracking. And Mr. Rogers did that. The Nixon administration, just a little background if you don't know, the Nixon administration was going to cut the $20 million funding. Bye, Meg. Thank you so much for
Bye.
joining
Thank
me. I'll send
you.
the recording too, so you can see the rest.
Great. Thank you so
See you
much.
next month.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. That they were going to cut $20 million of funding for PBS. And the author said, if that had gone away, that it would have been gone. We wouldn't have PBS today, that you're not getting that money back. And Mr. Rogers presented to him at a Senate committee to save PBS and talks about how he used that emotional intelligence to have that conversation that had started out with the senator very aggressively speaking to Mr. Rogers and kind of belittling public television and what Mr. Rogers' show was. And by the time Mr. Rogers had finished talking to him, he'd saved the $20 million and saved PBS ultimately. And it goes through each of the lines of the conversation and kind of dives into kind of the practice that he was using in that dialogue. And it was fascinating to me because I thought I would have been emotional wreck. If somebody was coming at me like that, I would have just been like, fine, whatever, and probably left the room in tears. But here's Mr. Rogers, who knows how to manage his feelings and manage his emotions and to have a conversation with someone without losing that control.
Being triggered
Yep.
or
Yep.
provoked.
Yep.
Oh, that is so good.
Yep. I can't
Especially
wait
in
to
this
watch
time.
it because I want to see it now that
Yes.
I know the different approach.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
and I think, again, for relevance and nonprofit work, you know, what we do is really hard and it's laborious and it's emotionally draining. And so I think we need to take time. One of the things that that Mr. Rogers practiced every day was rest. He built that time into his schedule. And I think we don't necessarily do that well in our hustle culture, right?
Yes.
If you're not hustling, then you're not working as hard and somebody's going to pass you on the ladder to the top. And we just tend to grind, and that nonprofit work is so emotionally draining that I think if we don't take that rest and we
Yes.
don't process, particularly if we're working with people who themselves are very emotionally charged, we take on some of that, right? I mean,
Yes.
I worked for nonprofits where I'd come home and I would just feel like I had been hit by a truck with the amount of just turmoil that I had experienced with the people that I was working with, or things I'd read about what they were going through, and, you know, going back to empathy. And it just, you know, I think it's important that we need to take that time to rest, to build our own emotional intelligence so that we can stay level, particularly in nonprofit work where we're talking to lots of different types of people who may be like the senator, be a little bit aggressive in it. And we need to be the calm, calm in the storm to help them navigate the process and be successful.
Wow. It sounds so spiritual. I'm gonna go and get this book. I'm praying it'll be at the library.
Yeah.
And then when I'm able to actually get it, I can go on your link and purchase it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm really excited and motivated to get that in any future books you're recommending.
Yeah.
But it sounds so spiritual to me. You know,
He
all
was a
the
minister. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
He was a Presbyterian minister trained
Okay.
before he started working in children's television. So there is a
Wow.
lot of that in what he does.
Yes, I
Yeah.
hear that in
Yep.
everything you're saying.
Yeah.
And
And that he
I
built in time for prayer every day and reflection as part of
yes,
his emotional intelligence.
yes.
I'm actually going to a presentation this afternoon or today over lunch about
Okay.
sacred rest, which reminded me a lot of what was talking about in here. I'm not as familiar with sacred rest, so I'm excited to learn about it, but how really that taking a step back and recharging our physical and spiritual batteries
Yes.
is really, for those of us that have a Christian background, that, you know, that's a testament to the blessings that God has given us. Let me take care of these blessings and let me take care of my
Yes.
body and my spirit, and take a step back to recharge, and how that is, you know, it's kind of reflecting to God that you put value in those things. You're not wearing yourself to the ground all the time.
There you go. I just wanted to recommend,
Yeah.
you mentioned the PBS, that's one of my favorite channels. So I'm not sure if you know, but they have a camp in a box. And with your young babies,
Yeah.
you know, they're offering any schools or educational, I can send it to you in the email if you like.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be great.
But I'm doing the virtual trainings, and they'll send the camp in a box once you did, because the one I did was on flight and air, and they're teaching, you know, like scientific principles, and engaging is for families, for educators, anyone can utilize those. So maybe the nonprofit you may come across who are, you know, educationally based or something.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. My kids
So
will love that too. To see
yeah,
food.
really good. And then there's another one coming up on the 31st, like the solar system. What is your superpower? Ohio 360, and then just the PBS to see. I don't know what your local PBS station is, but go on their website, and I'll send that in the email as well.
Yeah, that'll be perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
Yeah, we love
welcome.
PBS. My 2-year-old is probably watching Daniel Tiger as we speak in the other room.
How much time do you have on the book?
We're scheduled till 11:30, and
Okay.
unfortunately I mentioned that other
Yeah.
group, so I've got to jump off
Yes.
at 11:30. But if that works for
Okay.
you and you can stay on till then,
Okay.
I'd love to continue
Sure.
chatting with you. Perfect.
Yes.
The next
Definitely.
secret was the pause and think, which we've touched on that already too. But
Yes.
again, as nonprofit staff, I think we're so focused on fixing the problem sometime that we don't take the time to explore that white space that Mr. Rogers really valued, so that we can be silent in contemplating what we do, what the people that we're working with need, and so that
Yes.
we can do that active and authentic listening in that quiet space. And
Yes.
that's probably one of the hardest things for me
Yes.
is being
'Cause
quiet, because I do want to fill the air with sound, because I feel awkward in that quiet. But I'm going to commit to trying to stop doing that, to giving myself that time to really process what I've heard, so that I can respond well to people and to
yes.
give them that level of respect in the well-crafted response. And this is where he talks about too, that setting that time aside for yourself lets you get into that curiosity that Meg was talking about. It lets you see things that you are typically rushing by. And he used to
Mm.
take time and go, it said that he had a home in Nantucket. He'd just sit on the beach for hours and not talk to anybody and just
Mm.
look out there. And I thought, God, wouldn't that be
That's
amazing?
amazing.
But just even if it's just to sit in the car in quiet, turn the radio off and
Mhm.
just sit and think about the day, or reflect on
Yes.
how beautiful the weather is, and have that sense
Right.
of awe like kids do, of like,
Yes.
wow, look at the birds in the tree, or look, oh, the flowers are starting to come back, and things like that
Yes.
we just rush by every day.
And something that's been helping me, because I do look at the one thing that's not working instead of focusing on all that God is giving in what he's done. I look at that one tree instead of the forest, the
Yep.
blessings. And I'm trying to shift that again, because it is easy to rush past it and not say, oh, wow. So now I'm trying to be more, get back to saying, thank you, Lord, just for the waking me up, or
Yep.
getting me to where I needed to go safely, or being able to meet someone and putting the right people in my life, Sorry.
Just the little things like
The
that,
little things.
and that ties really well into section 4.
Mhm.
You know, show gratitude is secret number 4. And
Yes.
not just, I think, from a spiritual perspective, obviously showing gratitude is an important part. In Christian tenets, we talk about showing gratitude all the time and giving thanks for our blessings,
Yes.
but also talking about gratitude from us and to us, that it's a 2-step process, that we have to be ready to accept gratitude and to
Yes.
give gratitude. And that I loved the definition that the author shared. I think she attributed to somebody else, but she shares it, that gratitude is a 2-step process: identification that a positive outcome has been obtained, and recognition that the positive outcome is attributed to something or someone outside of ourselves. And I think that is, I think sometimes it's easy to do the first part of that. Be like, oh, wow, that was great that happened. Yeah. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep going, but just in case for the recording too, but we can jump back into chatting about this too. But I think it's easy for us to think, wow, it was great that thing happened to us, but not attribute it to someone or something else. And so I think making sure that we invest the time into that second part of it is important. And it's mutually beneficial. I'm a huge thank you card writer. I've been told that nonprofits that I worked for have received grants because I sent a thank you note. And that I've been told I got a job one time because I was the candidate that sent a thank you note for the interview. And so it's a little thing that can go a long way. and can make a huge difference and mean a lot. I've got a friend that's also a thank you note writer, and we actually at one point like got into this like friendly competition. She sent me a thank you note one time for sending her a thank you note. So we went back and forth. I don't remember how many times it went, but just being silly, went back and forth on sending each other thank you notes. And it was just kind of this little silly little thing, but it made me feel good to get a note, you know, to get those little nods of gratitude from her.
Yes.
And I think in the book references that gratitude fuels that connection. It helps us, you know, when we're having that conversation with somebody to say, thank you for sharing that. I know that was hard to talk about, but thank you, because it creates that bond between you as if you are now, you know, in a level of mutual respect. I understand a bit more about what it's like to walk around in your shoes. So we've built this connection, and it creates that positive emotional atmosphere that we can both work together to help solve whatever the challenge is.
Right.
And from a nonprofit perspective too, this line in the chapter struck me. For every negative interaction, there needs to be at least 5 positives to create an overall atmosphere of emotional positivity. So I know in fundraising, we always have the rule of 6, which is funny that this was 6 interactions to me, but the rule of, you know, that typically it takes a donor 6 interactions from your organization before they respond. And, you know, thinking about it this way too, 1 negative interaction requires 5 positives to switch it. So, you know, if you think about the people that we're working with that are dealing with these challenges, the probably the very first the first thing that's happened to them has been negative. And so we are then charged with the very first thing that we do needs to be positive, or it's going to continue to be a negative situation for them. And then to build on that so that we can, you know, help them have a better quality of life than they did when they came to us.
Can I just add one thing?
Yeah,
too?
absolutely.
I went to I'm in AmeriCorps, so they had a big conference back in November, and one of the best breakout sessions that I went to, he was saying that he partnered with an organization, and they didn't call their volunteers volunteers, they called them influencers. So they worked together to help solve the problem, and to help, they all joined, and it wasn't just we're going to come into your neighborhood and fix you or fix this. Everybody had buy-in, and that is what moved the needle more.
I think there's so much value in that, because we attach so much weight to those titles, and in some cases, I think create a hierarchy, which, you know, if I were a client of the nonprofit, I would feel that did that, I would feel so much more connected to that person, as opposed to a gap between me needing something and you being able to give it to me. That kind of power shift that I think prevents a lot of people from reaching out to nonprofits in the first place, because you feel inferior for needing that help. And I think the terminology that we use around that, and we're seeing that change a lot in grant writing too, of that we're not doing that doom and gloom. The world is going to cave in if we don't have your $100,000 grant. These people are going to have all these terrible things happen to them. It's being turned on its head in a positive way. We're saying exactly the same thing, but instead of all these terrible things are going to happen to these people if you don't give us money, we're talking about all of these wonderful things could happen to these people if you did give us money. And that is so much more from a psychological perspective. If you study kind of like how people give and why they give, that's so much more powerful, because you always want to be part of something positive that's happening. You don't want to feel like here's this vast giant pit of ugly, and I'm just throwing a little bit of money in there to see if, you know, if we can raise these people up a little bit. It's like, yes, all these wonderful things are happening, and I want to be part of this wonderful, you know, all the wonderful, positive, energetic things that are happening. So
Yes.
I think a lot of how we frame what we do can be easy to fall into the negative and fall into the gap distinction between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
But if we turn that on its head, I think we can have a much bigger impact for those we serve, and in
Yes.
fundraising in general.
Definitely.
Yeah. And, you know, the key takeaway there is gratitude costs nothing.
Yeah.
You know, a thank you note, you can get a thank you note for 99 cents, you know,
Yes.
at Target. if you want to even do that, or you could send somebody an email. I mean, it costs us nothing to be grateful, but it can be such a huge and valuable part of all of our relationships. I'm looking at the clock here. I'm going to move a little faster through these. I've truly enjoyed our conversation.
Okay.
We did talk about this one a little bit too already. Secret number 5 is develop empathy, and knowing the difference between sympathy and empathy. I think
Yes.
nonprofit professionals who have been around longer than 5 minutes do this well. This really resonated with me because I don't think there's a lot of people who stick around nonprofits for a long time that don't understand the difference between empathy and sympathy.
Yes.
Where empathy being that you know what it feels like to have
Yes.
that. You've either experienced it yourself, or you're so emotionally intelligent, like Mr. Rogers talks about, that you feel that emotion with that person.
Yes.
And sympathy is just, I'm sorry this is happening to you.
Yes.
And the author talks about, think about like on social media where somebody shares that they've lost a loved one, and everybody means well in the, I'm sorry, I'm sorry for your loss. And
Mhm.
it's because we as a society, we don't really know how to talk about that in a way that's empathetic to
Right.
say, I know your grandfather meant so much to you. I saw your posts about him all the time.
Mhm.
I'm sure that this is one of the most emotionally challenging and draining times you've ever had. And, to empathize on a level beyond just feeling that, saying that you're sorry, because that's the conversation ender, is what she says in the book and what Mr. Rogers said. There's no engagement there with the person. It's just, I'm sorry for your loss, and no ill intended, but
Yes.
if you want to be truly building a relationship with that person and to feel and understand what they're feeling, it requires a little bit more than just being sorry.
Yes.
One thing that they talk about too in this section that did strike me was having empathy for yourself, and
Mm.
how you talk to yourself is so critically important, because I can be my own worst enemy.
Yes.
I found myself the other day walking through the kitchen, and I don't even remember what it was. And I was just like, Melanie, you idiot. And my 7-year-old said, Mom, you're not an idiot. You're one of the smartest people I know. And I thought, I'm teaching. And he's like, don't say that. And I'm like, here I am. He's listening to me, and I'm
Yes.
teaching him how to have an internal dialogue. And
Mhm.
I don't want him to think he's an idiot. Like, why is it okay for me to say that to myself when I would never say that to him or anybody else?
Yeah.
And so I think, I need to work on my inner dialogue. That was my takeaway in this chapter. Work on my inner dialogue and be as kind and empathetic to myself as I hope that I am to the people that I encounter every day.
Yes.
And then
Grace.
that'll make me more empathetic. It's go back to that self-awareness, more empathetic to them, because
Mhm.
I understand how to be empathetic to myself.
Yes.
Just putting that into practice. And 6 is practice acceptance and self-acceptance. We talked about this at the beginning. Understanding who you are
Mhm.
is the critical first step in that, because you can't be honest about your relationships with other people if you're not honest about who you are and what you bring to the table, and
Yes.
to talk about strengths and weaknesses and shortcomings and challenges that you've had in the past. And I already read my favorite line in there about, that it could be create an empty and phony relationship, that you're just kind of projecting who you want that person to be, because you
Yeah.
don't know who you are. So it's hard for you to identify who that person is.
Yes.
And going through that practice of self-acceptance lets you accept. He said that Mr. Rogers was not like, you have to love everything about that person. You don't have to love everything about that person in order to accept them for who they are. But you
Yes.
do have to accept them for who they are and not try to self-project or change, and understand where they're coming from based on their unique experience in life. I think that's
Yes.
so important in nonprofit too, like we talked about. It's easy for me sitting in my, like you mentioned before, my various and unique point of view from life, whether that's privilege or just perspective. I
Yes.
don't know what it's like. I've worked with a nonprofit client that worked with people in Nepal. It was an eye-opening experience for me.
Mhm.
These women in Nepal who were essentially just shoved into a slavery-like situation at 13 and 14 because their parents couldn't afford to feed them anymore,
Right.
and a marriage/slavery situation. And I thought, I have no concept of that. Like,
Yes.
not even just from me personally, but sitting here in America as a country, or a
Mhm.
nonprofit that I'm working with that's in Africa right now, and they're trying to overcome the malnutrition issue that's there and the health issue that's there and the poverty. And I had to say to him, you have to talk to me like an American. I have no concept of what poverty looks like in Liberia versus
Mhm.
what poverty looks like in Northwest Georgia, because I
Yes.
know our poverty is awful, but I know that what's happening there is beyond my comprehension. So I
Yes.
can't write about that unless you tell me what that's like, and just kind of understanding that what I bring to the table is very different from what they can bring to the table, as far as an understanding and accepting of the reality of those situations and those
Yes.
people's view of the world. Um,
Yes.
and I liked in there in this section for nonprofits, the author, she talked about reframing was something that Mr. Rogers did really well. And I didn't really understand what that meant till I read her example. And I was like, I do that all the time. The glass half empty or half full approach. And,
Yes.
like she said that her grandmother, somebody would say, you're bossy. And she would say, I'm not bossy. I'm just a confident leader. And,
Mm.
I respond to my kids like that, with things. And I'm like, I actually am pretty good at that, but I do it mostly in jest.
Yes.
But I think if I can try to do that, again, like curiosity, discovering the world, seeing things in a new way,
Yes.
will help train your brain to be half full and not half empty.
Yes. My son just started, my children are a little bit older, so he just decided to go to school. So he wants to enroll recently. Um, but they're doing something on the Groundhog Day, the movie, Bill
Oh
Murray.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So the concept of time, point of view, and that was one of the scenes where he was at a bar and with two other gentlemen, and he said, "Are you the type of guy that looks at things? Are you the half glass empty guy or the half full guy?"
Yeah.
So he got better as time went on, but you just nailed it.
Yeah, that movie is perfect. A perfect relation to that, of how he starts out versus how he finishes.
Yes.
Um, I love that movie. I think it's hysterical. I love it.
Yeah.
And then secret number 7, establish security. And as a parent, I recognize a lot of the concepts in this chapter from raising kids.
Yes.
The author talks about how Mr. Rogers really reinforced that everyone needs to know that they're cared for, and it needs to be repeated constantly, and that's how you establish security in that relationship. And it talked about how children need that caregiver, whether that's a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, somebody, mentor, that they can go and recharge their batteries in those emotionally draining moments. They can go to that person and feel secure in that, and that they can then develop their own emotional intelligence that way, and their own emotional stability. Like, I know that that's been a huge thing for me, is to understand that my kids don't know how to know yet how to balance out those emotions. I look at it from an adult, like, okay, go sit down, go calm down. They don't know how to do that. And
Right.
so understanding that they need that security from me in order to learn how to do that, how to self-regulate, and that is tied directly into that emotional intelligence that was earlier in the book. And um, this line is a little long, but it really, really hit me here.
Mhm.
Learning to love by experiencing love from others helps to develop a more secure style of relating to others. Hearing the voice of a kind, loving, and receptive parent or mentor, or in our case, nonprofit staff person,
Mhm.
echoed again and again, sets people up to become so familiar with the voice of those expressions of care that they internalize them and develop a kind of internal parent to reassure themselves when that person is absent. And that just, that to me is like the ideal. If my kids can feel comforted by me when I'm not here, or if somebody that I interact with for work can think, well, Melanie told me this, and now I feel good about that, you know, and to me, that feels like the ultimate goal of a nonprofit, right? That somebody starts at a place that's so hard and so challenging, and they don't know how to fix it. And
Mhm.
we've built them up so well in the functionality of our programs, but also in the intrinsic spirituality of our programs, that they know that if they ever face that obstacle again, they are now, they feel empowered to be able to overcome that on their own, or they know where to go to find that the
Those
solutions.
resources.
Yep.
Yes. And they have that self-efficacy built up because they collided with the nonprofit
The nonprofit. Yep. To
or the
me, that's the
individuals.
ultimate goal. Yep.
Yes.
And to boil down anybody's mission, take away all the details, like that should be the centerpiece of the mission, is that people
Yes.
come to us, they receive change, and they receive the tools they need to maintain that change.
There you go.
And so I just, that was a perfect way to sum it up for me. And I just truly saw there were a few points in it, I was like, oh, is this really relevant to nonprofits? But that to me really, really felt like truly relevant to nonprofits. So I really enjoyed this book. I think you will too, especially if you love Mr. Rogers, like you shared. And I'm excited to, I would love to, if you have the time, I know, I'm sure you're busy, just send me a little note and let me know what you thought about it. Because I'd
Okay.
love to hear. I hope it's at your library. I actually saw it too. I don't know if you've got an Ollie's Bargain Barn.
Yes, we do.
I saw it. It was months ago now. And I know Ollie's is like Big Lots where their stuff changes out all the time. But I saw it there first.
Okay.
And then I was like, and I didn't buy it at first. I was like, let me go on Amazon and read some reviews.
Mhm.
And I read the reviews and I read the synopsis and I thought, I think this will be really, really good. A good change of pace from just here's how to be a good nonprofit fundraiser,
Yes.
you know, to think about the people that we're serving.
Yes.
And so it was there. I think it was at Ollie's for like $2.50 or something crazy. But I hope it's
Yes.
at your library and I hope you can get a copy of it and let me know what you think of it. And I will
Okay.
put together a flyer. I'm so grateful for that suggestion.
No problem.
And send it your way to share at your library. And I'll put it up at mine and anybody
Thank
else who
you.
joins us in future months. Hopefully we do have the book out for next month. It's
Okay.
in the email today. It's I'm not going to say the title right.
Okay.
Let's see. I actually have it up here. Let's see. It's Compelling Conversations for Fundraisers. Talk Your Way to Success with Donors and Funders. So a bit more functional next month, but I think it'll be good and a good time of year to do that as we're, you know, looking at event season and gearing things back up with fundraising. So
Yes. Thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it and I'll definitely do my homework and have better contribution to the discussions as well. So
oh no, you did a great job. I appreciate all that you shared and I'm excited to continue to connect and network with you and learn more about what you do and see you at future book club meetings.
thank you.
Thanks, Deanna. Have a
Have a
great
great
day.
one. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.